so they're smoking pipe, crack, something else.
I didn't like getting shot at a couple times.
Are you serious? You're just gonna put yourself in a bad situation. She's gonna leave that appointment thinking, that guy's a he tried to at me.
That's what happens when you don't pay your drug bill. They show up to collect.
All right, so we are headed to an appointment with a very unique seller finance situation. So here's the story. Karolyn Kane, who is one of our leaders in Subto, she runs a morning Zoom every single morning. Actually, she runs 2 Zooms every morning called the Daily Dial. And on the Daily Dial this morning, she had a lead pop up from a student who has been door knocking in Tempe, Arizona. The student brings it to Karolyn, because that's what the Daily Dial is all about, is helping each other out and getting all the new students acclimated and constant help 3, 4, or 5 hours every single morning. The new student brought the deal to Dustin Kircher, who's been in Subto for 3.5 years, Uncle Lanza, who's been in Subto for 3.5 years, and Karolyn Kane. And Karolyn says, oh my gosh, this house is right next to Pace's old office that I first worked for Pace at. Pace might want to buy this deal. The property does not cash flow. It has a lot of problems. The original seller financed the property to a gentleman named Eric. Eric ends up, sad story, lost his wife and his kids to a tragic car accident. Eric then gets addicted to drugs and falls kind of into the abyss, and he can't make the payments to the original seller who gave him the house on seller finance. So Eric goes to his boss, Carol, and says, Carol, I'm behind on my payments on this house. I'm going to deed or transfer the property over to you. Carol says, ooh, a free house? Amazing, I'll take it. And my understanding is Carol did not understand that the house was now behind on payments, and Eric, in his abysmal state, stripped the property of all the copper and all of the other things to sell things in the house, and it basically turned into a drug den. So Carol takes the property, goes over to the house and says, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? And through door knocking, one of our students gets a hold of Carol and says, hey, would you let us take over payments on your house? Carol then tells the story and she says, well, I will just deed the property to you, but you have to give me $25,000 to let go of this house. So Karolyn calls me, she gets me on the phone. It's about a 27-minute phone call with Carol. Carol is doing paperwork, obviously, on speakerphone. She is so not involved in the conversation. So a good acquisition person will say, oh, hey, Carol, let's just meet at the property, because I'm not gonna fight over her doing paperwork, and I'm also not gonna call out to her that it's rude to be doing that, because she's my prospect, right? I'm gonna be very respectful to her, and I'm gonna figure out, how do I just get in front of this lady? So she's gonna meet us at this property, and we get to meet Carol, we get to see the house, and I get to hear maybe some of the story that I misunderstood, or I get to hear part of the story that is missing. Why is the story important? Because every stupid salesperson, I tell you right now, anybody that does sales training that doesn't teach this is a piece of shit, okay? I learned sales training incorrectly. What sales trainers do is they talk about manipulating the seller and the prospect through asking questions to get them into a mental state, to get them to lower their price, make them feel stupid about their property, beat up their house, all sorts of things that most salespeople do. The right thing to do, and the reason why we close so many deals, is to actually listen to the seller. And listen to what's going on. Pay attention, and where are the bunnies? And where are the problems? And where can you, the person who's working the deal, actually bring value to that person? So, what can I do in this situation? This is what's so great about creative finance. It's the greatest thing in the world. There's 3 people involved here. The original seller, Eric, okay, and Carol. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna meet with Carol, and I'm gonna get this property under contract with Carol. Once I'm under contract with Carol, I'm gonna go back to the original lien holder, the guy who created the first note. Some of you YouTubers, you newbies, are like, what's a note? Type in Pace Morby, what is a note? The original note holder, the guy who seller financed it to Eric, he created a loan, did he not? So why don't I just go back to the original lien holder, the guy who created the note, and recreate the note from scratch so that I don't have arrears and I can get a different purchase price and I get a different interest rate, and I can also change the payment so I can make sure I'm cash flowing on this property. So this is one of those very unique, probably comes across my table 5 to 10 times a year, where I can get the house under contract and go back to the original seller and have them recreate the original underlying note. So not only am I buying the property from Carol on Creative Finance, but I get to go to Creative Finance heaven and go back to the original seller and restructure the entire note without Carol even knowing. Carol, if she was in the Subto community, would know to just go back to the original lien holder and go, hey, let's restructure this so this makes sense for me to own this. Instead, she's just like, I don't know what to do here. It's behind on payments. Go to the bank. The seller, the original guy who sold it, was the bank, is the bank. Just go back to him and restructure it. So today, we're meeting with Carol, and I'm going to get her under contract, and then I'm going to go back and restructure the loan in probably a part 2 video. I've got Cori _party of5 Instagram with us, and I've got Karolyn Briley, who has been a great leader in Subto for a couple of years. You guys get to see me talk to a seller and build rapport with this lady, Carol. See you in a minute.
1 minute later.
21, okay, so this is the house. So she's got it boarded up, but look how clean it is. I was expecting something way worse. Think there's any homeless people in here? Almost guaranteed. Wow, she's taking care of it. Let's call her up. Hi, Carol.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm down here in the Tempe area. Are you anywhere near?
Yeah, I am.
I'll just hang out. I've got a couple of my students with me. We're just gonna hang out. I'm in front of the house in a white truck.
Walk around the place. I did have a landscaper that sharpened everything up. I hope it's still like that. But
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Thank you so much.
yeah, just walk around and you can see what the situation is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I'll see you in a couple minutes. So here's another thing that I think differently about Carol. Most people think of Carol as a distressed seller. When you understand somebody's actual story and you listen to what's going on in their life, you'll realize that Carol is actually not a distressed seller. Carol is a busy business owner. And what do busy business owners have? They have money. And she's just a smart business person. She's like, give me 25 grand and I'll walk away from the house. So she doesn't want to deal with it because it takes her away from her other money-making activities. So if that's the case, what else is she? Karolyn, what else is she besides a seller?
She's a private money lender. She's an investor.
There you go. My very best private money lenders, like Desiree, have all come from, we thought they were a distressed seller, but they were just a busy seller. And they're like, I just don't want to deal with this. Give me $10,000 and I'll give you the house. And then those sellers end up taking either the money I gave them and redeploying it into my projects, or I just become friends with them and then they end up investing in our apartment syndications or whatever else. All right, you guys want to go see this and see if there's any homeless people in here? These are the weird things that I notice that other people don't notice. Number one, this is not new plywood. So if the city does it, if you have the city do it, the city actually goes and gets new plywood and they charge you for it. So if you get your house condemned by the city will board up your house and charge you $5 grand for it. And they bring new plywood. So this is something she did, or the city told her to do and she did it herself. So she got a piece of used plywood. Yeah. Oh, all right. So what do we learn here too? Drug addicts, man. They'll just come and pull breakers out. They'll pull. You'll notice that the only wire that's still here is the aluminum wire. They come and snip out all the copper stuff, like every little piece of copper. That's crazy. What does this tell you? This is the bathroom. The toilet's on this side. Tells you that the 3-inch drain has been replaced recently. And so this is probably less than 15 years old. So this is not original plumbing. So they've switched out the 3-inch pipe, which is a good thing. Because sometimes that'll cost you 15,000 bucks when you buy this stuff. Wow.
Wow.
These people are getting ready for a zombie apocalypse or something.
Oh my god.
Holy crap. Hey, so look at this too. Like, I should have been a detective. Can you tell where they were smoking?
Where all the black spots are?
Yep, and they weren't smoking cigarettes under here because cigarette creates what color smoke damage?
Like brown.
Right, is this
Smoking
brown?
Pipes.
It's more black, so they're smoking pipe, crack, something else. They probably had a little fire out here doing whatever.
Yeah. How long has this been going on? A couple years? Oh yeah. So the lady who ended up taking over, her name's Carol. She's a really busy lady, so I just told her, hey, let me just buy it and clean it up and get it rented out. What's your name?
I'm Pat.
Pat, I'm Pace. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
You'll probably see my crews over here in the next like 30, 40 days.
All right, cool. Yeah, like I said, I was just kind of.
Yeah, get it. I totally get it.
All right, cool. Thanks, man. If you
Okay.
need anything, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Carol. You got your neighbors, they're like, hey, please clean this up.
Yeah, but they used to beg me, please get the drug dealers out of here.
Yeah, I know. He said that you've done a good job, actually.
Yeah, I did my best. I didn't like getting shot at a couple times.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And we were worried about the bike riders.
I know. Is that funny?
Shoot at her. Shoot back.
That's what happens when you don't pay your drug bill. They show up to collect.
Wow. Nice to meet you. I'm Pace.
Oh yeah, I had my workers here one day, and they came busting in the front through there. Guns, knives, it was charming.
You're joking.
No, I'm not joking.
It's been a while since I've had a homeless person pull a gun on me. Oh my word. Oh yeah. Did it catch fire, Carol? Or is it just like the smoke?
That's what you call a meth fire.
Okay.
Wow. That was in the...
Oh wow. Look. This is them just trying to get the copper out. It's lighting stuff on fire. Wow.
Yeah, they broke back in.
So Eric was working for you. He basically asked you to step in and help him out. And is he still working for you right now? Or is he gone? Like you don't even know where he's at?
He is around. No, he has to be because he committed another felony. He stole a bunch of stuff.
From you guys?
No. What happened in a nutshell? I've known Eric since, I guess, 2009. He was living in a halfway house, and he knew somebody that RP hired him. I used to pick him up in that same pickup truck
Yeah.
from a halfway house.
What's your takeaway on that?
She is fed up. She wants out of it.
Like the type of person that Carol is, right? She's not going to work with a negotiator because she is a negotiator.
Yeah.
So the position you have to take in personality type like hers is you sit back and you take a more subdued approach. So you let her talk, and everything you say to her is just to encourage her to just continue to talk about the pain. Obviously, it works in every personality type to remind them to talk about the pain all the time. But you also don't take your time to tell her stories because she has no patience.
Yeah.
So like everything you do with her, she doesn't want to get to know you. She doesn't care about your story. And she feels like she got to know you after talking to you about herself. And that was something that I had a hard time learning like 6 years ago when I was doing every day I was doing 3 or 4 appointments like that. I would take the same approach with every seller. A Carol, I would go, okay, I have to match her energy. And then it would turn into a battle, and somebody like that, I mean, it's pretty obvious, you know this. Like that lady's not the type to back down or negotiate. In fact, if you try and negotiate with a Carol, you're just gonna put yourself in a bad situation. She's gonna leave that appointment thinking, that guy's a bullshitter.
Yeah.
He tried to bullshit me. But I was like, okay, this is pretty obvious. I'm gonna give her zero ammunition, so when she leaves, she's like, okay, I talked the whole time. She won't say this consciously, but she'll feel like she's in control. And do I really have to close her? Not on the terms of the deal. The terms of the deal are already set. $25,000, she walks away, I take over the existing note. Once I get under contract, I'll then go to Joe and say, hey Joe, here's the situation. I'm gonna catch this up. You're gonna get a chunk of money and that's great, but I'm gonna make a lot of money long term. How about I tie you into that and we let go of the arrears? Like, I'll restructure that note. So I'm not going to fight with Carol on her purchase price. However, how many other people is she talking to on a daily basis that are, she even alluded to it. She's like, people are calling me, they're saying this, they're talking all sorts of shit. They're doing this, 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 and this. How many of those young wholesalers refuse to basically meet the lady at the house? All of them. They're trying to do it virtually. And so there is an advantage to just meeting the lady in person and letting her spew her guts and get to feel like she knows you. Why hasn't she sold the property yet? If she's been in foreclosure, $47,000 in payments. So how long has that house been in foreclosure? Right, at least a couple years, right? So Eric, why would that seller not have sold a year ago?
Too busy, didn't want to deal with it. She was still connected to Eric in such a way, and it sounded like she really wanted to, she was just waiting it out, hoping that he would break through and just one day he'll turn around and he'll just like, oh, I'm good now, I went through rehab.
She had an accident? Okay. Biggest reason?
Her age.
Her age, okay. Biggest reason? This is the same reason for every seller, by the way. Those are all four very valid points, but this is the biggest one. She had not felt enough pain, or the reality of the situation had not set in yet.
Because there are other businesses doing so well that this hasn't affected her enough to like, I need to light a fire under her ass to get it done now.
Right, so what lights the fire under her ass in this situation? The pending foreclosure on the 18th. She now is like, oh my gosh, I have to catch up those $47,000 of payments, and I have to go in and renovate the property before this property turns into making money.
She doesn't have time for that.
She doesn't have time for that. And if Joe did not have the foreclosure coming up so close, she would have just been like another year, maybe 2 years. So the reason I bring this up is because when people are working foreclosure, like in Arizona, our foreclosures are 90 days. Texas is faster. Yeah, you guys are like 30 to 60 days. So if you're working foreclosures, the best state to actually work foreclosures in is Texas. So the state of Texas gives these people a ticking time bomb and says, here you go, you have a 30-day ticking time bomb, you're gonna lose your house, and we're no bullshit. Arizona is a little bit slower, but still really, really good. 90 to 120 days is our foreclosure process. So Joe just finally was like, I'm sick of it. This lady's not doing anything. She's cleaning up the property, but what does that do for me? She's not making payments to me. And so here's what happens with all these guys working foreclosures. In the first 30 days, they call her and they pester her. And they're looking for the low-hanging fruit immediately. Low-hanging fruit. Who out of all the people I'm calling on the foreclosure list has so much pain that they're ready to sign a deal right now? Another 90 days goes by and basically everybody stops calling the lady on the 90-day list. In my opinion, if you're doing foreclosures, you only call the people that are like 2 weeks before foreclosure, because that's where they finally make their decision. That's where they finally are like, I have no choice. I've exhausted. I've talked to real estate agents, talked to real estate agents. I've even probably listed my property. I've been turned down for a loan modification. A bunch of wholesalers have already attempted to buy my house. So if that pain has already been there and you've already had all those conversations, then you have no more objections. You just walk in as the person that knows creative finance and go, look, nobody else could solve your problem because they don't know what I know. Same thing with this lady, right? I'm the only one that knows how to solve that problem, which is go back and restructure the underlying note to make this deal work. Everybody else is like, yeah, that's a foregone thing. Let it go to foreclosure. Somebody will buy it at pennies on the dollar on the auction block. If you know creative finance, then you can go into that situation and go, I'm the only one that has the solution. Literally, look at that. That lady's been in foreclosure for 90 days. Everybody else has stopped talking to her, except for our team. The people who are knocking foreclosures and offering, I'll just take over the payments. And the lady, Carol, was like, I didn't even know that was an option. But yeah, I would do this and just take 25 grand and walk away from the whole thing. And literally nobody else in the prior 90 days even offered that to her. Either they're young and they're inexperienced and they don't know how to talk to people in general, or B, they learned from a sales trainer that's like, control the conversation. If this is happening and that's happening, you've lost control of the conversation. You got to jump in and whatever. I see a lot of people, I'll go on appointments. I haven't gone on appointments with people in a long time, probably 3 years. But I used to go on people's appointments before we started the Subto community. and I would just listen. I'd be like, hi, I'm their trainee. And I would sit there in their appointments and I'd watch and go, oh my gosh, you wouldn't even let the seller say anything. Well, yeah, Pace, they were ranting. I'm like, bro, that's where the ammunition comes from.
You were so quiet.
Yeah, you got to switch it up.
It was the best active listening I've ever seen in person.
And when you know me in real life and you're my friend, you're like, that is not the Pace I know. You learn the equation. Shut the hell up, let her vent. She's gonna give you little nuggets here and there.
What I took away wasn't even you trying to get the house. That was a life skill
Yeah.
that you should be practicing, and I want to make sure that I'm practicing more, because everything she talked about, even though it seemed almost like crazy, all the conversations and you really paying attention to it, that skill is something that I think everyone can take away and benefit whatever you're trying to do in life, because you start to recognize how to talk to other people and how to get through a situation in general. Even if you're trying to gain a property or gain something from that, it's being genuine in that conversation and actually listening and reiterating what you heard. And the way that you stood there with your arms, most people think like standing here with your arms crossed is kind of like, I'm not listening. You were so gentle in the way that you were standing that she could tell that you were really paying attention and that you cared to listen without saying a thing.
Yeah.
You let her do all the talking.
And the other thing I notice about, having 8 sisters and all that kind of stuff, people that say, well, when you have a closed stance, it means you're closed off. I learned that with women, if you have your hands down and you're a man, it's actually a bad thing. So what I do is I typically will lock up my arms and just show them like, I'm here relaxed in a listening position and I have no intention of moving around or doing anything else. It's weird that my wife, she did a whole class on how to protect yourself as a real estate agent. And in that class, she talked to the men about when you're with a woman and you're by yourself, like make sure your hands are visible and that they're not in your pockets, they're not by your side, they're not by your whatever, because what's easier to grab somebody, when your hands are to your side that you can just go like this, or when your hands are locked up? And so for me, if I'm a woman, I would rather go, okay, this person's locked up, they're in a relaxed state, and you look more comfortable that way. And I learned the opposite. When I was taking sales training, they're like, have an open position, show them that you're there and you're present. But when it's a woman, I don't do it that way. If it's a man, I'll put my hands on my hips. That's like 100% we'll get that contract today. And then the fun starts. I get to call Joe and go, hey, I've got this under contract. We're gonna catch up the arrears. I'm gonna own the property. I'm gonna do this, this, and this with it. I'd love to have you participate in some of the upside, but your note is behind. And if I pay you the $47,000, first off, you're not gonna get that on auction. Like somebody's gonna, I think this is what's crazy about this house too. This is mind-blowing to me. The house is currently, the ARV on that house is 400. Even as a 2-1 in Tempe, it's a $400,000 house. The note is at 190. So there's upside in that property. Even if I bought it cash, there's still upside in that property, and I could get it rented out. I could do a refi into Burr. I don't know that it would cash flow in Burr, but why is Carol not willing to just go the distance? These are the things that nobody taught me when I was starting. I was like, but why? Why would Carol not just do the project herself? It's like, well, first off, she's not a full-time real estate investor like you're trying to be. She runs a warehouse. She's busy. She's doing payroll. She's in a rush all the time. She's busy. And when you see those appointments in person and you hear people's actual full story, it gives you the reason why somebody is going to sell to you instead of just doing the project themselves. And I didn't understand that. I was like, no, we're robbing people. We're taking their potential equity. That was my belief when I first started this business. But then when you actually understand and you are curious, and I would say that that's one of the best things you could do when you start in this business, is just be genuinely curious about the person you're talking to with no intention of getting the deal, and just going, I'm gonna pull out your story. If my homework assignment is to go home and write a 5-chapter book about your life, I wanna be able to have enough information to fill that book up of 5 chapters of information. And if that's your only goal in going in those appointments, you're just gonna be so curious and ask more questions and get them to explain themselves, and you go, oh, that's why. Joe's a problem. Eric keeps coming to the house. She's got bad memories with this whole entire situation. It's like, I think about that house, she's like, it's a nightmare house. I don't look at it as a nightmare house. I look at it as an opportunity for me to make a lot of money. But I also go down to a Mexican restaurant that I love every day, and I'm like, I love this Mexican restaurant, but somebody else went to that Mexican restaurant 2 weeks ago and had a cockroach in their food, and now that restaurant. So like, I don't have the same feelings she has about the house, but I'm gonna lean into her feelings. I'm like, yeah, this is a nightmare house. I actually teed that up for her. I was like, yeah, it's kind of a nightmare house. She goes, yeah, it is a nightmare house. Reminding her that, hey, you saw a cockroach in the food here. You don't want to be here. This is a horrible place. You don't want to be here, but I'll take your seat. Yeah, so this will be part 1, guys, of this entire story and this saga. This will be part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. We'll do some recordings behind the scenes. If you're in the Subto community, you'll get to see all the cool phone calls and all the cool, great things and the paperwork. If you're not in the Subto community, just stay tuned for like the overarching story, and we'll tell you guys the overarching story and the final culmination of all the things that are happening. You won't subscribe, so there's no point in me telling you to subscribe. You know, so don't subscribe.